And welcome everybody to another Smart Money Circle show. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Michael Weening, who's the president and CEO of CALX, ticker symbol CALX. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Adam. Really appreciate it.
So I always like to begin. Can you tell us a little about your story and how you got to where you are today, please?
Sure. So I have gone through an interesting career journey. I was at Microsoft for a long period. I was at Dell when it was a $2 billion company. I worked in Europe when I was at Microsoft, got recruited back by a large telecommunications company, Bell Canada, to run a turnaround. Then I went to Salesforce. They actually shipped me off to Tokyo, where I learned how to run a cloud and software company. And then I ran a global job before actually landing at CALX, which was something that came from a recruiter where I was considering going to a pre-IPO, very large cloud company that you would know. I was considering, what do I do at Salesforce? And then out of the blue came this company. And the way they described it is there was at that time, a 13, 14-year-old hardware company that was going through a significant transformation. The founder of the company, his name's Carl Russo. This was his third multi-billion-dollar attempt. So the second company he stole, which was Sarhan, to Cisco for $7 billion. The one before that, he sold for $2 billion. So this was his third company. And I figured that with his vision, after a short conversation of how to transform the company into a software and cloud and really transform the industry, that it was something I wanted to do. And that's why I'm at CALX 7.5 years ago. Yes.
Love that. So let's talk about the actual business. Can you please let us know a little bit more about CALX and some of your competitive advantages?
Right. So CALX, we help broadband providers do really three things with their business. The leveraging our cloud and software platforms and the appliances that go underneath of it. We help them simplify the business, which means that they can take what is traditionally a very complex business where it takes 18 to 24 months to do the simplest thing. And where by using the cloud and software platform, you can simplify everything you're doing from an operational point of view by abstracting the complexity into the software in the cloud. And that allows customers to do things like, where they would normally bring on a new solution into their business in 18 to 24 months, they're now doing it in 7 to 30 days. It's a radical transformation of their business. The second thing we help them do is really excite their subscribers. So if you think about the cable and broadband companies who serve you, how many of us are excited by the things that they do and the good services that they provide, right? It's an industry that's notorious for either a negative net promoter score or single digit. And the only thing that people like to do at parties is actually talk about how bad their cable and telephone company suck, right? And
Right.
so with our software and cloud platform, we give them analytics and instrumentation so that whether a small company or a big company, what they can do is really understand that subscriber and deliver really interesting experiences, which is why on average, our customers have a net promoter score around between 50 and 90, believe it or not. And if you compare and contrast that to an Apple's at 58. So delivering those really exciting experiences. And then the last part that we do is help them grow. And growth means multiple things. So if you're obviously a profit-orientated broadband provider, family-owned, PE-led, or public, it's all about growing, margin, profits, all those different elements. But 42% of our customers are actually not for profits. If you look in rural US, it is actually run by cooperatives. There are thousands of cooperatives who are local to the community, and they run them as not-for-profit, where the profits go back to members. In their case, growth means something different, which is actually transform the lives of their members, but then also grow their community and help rural America thrive. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
That's really great. And then, so you're able to go deeper, I guess. You find these companies that have recurring revenue, they have a stable customer base. I'm not switching my broadband provider anytime soon, but I guess increase my net promoter score so I have a better experience with that broadband provider and allow them to, would they sell me more products as well, or would it just be
Yes, well, right. So what do loyal companies do? Buy more, right?
right?
Now, the tradition, so the first thing is, to your point, I would say table stakes are create this incredible experience. And that incredible experience, we've also helped them diversify the business, which is very difficult for them to do. So we help them with the residential, but we also help them with small business, medium business, also the relationship with the mayor and the town and education. So how do you build a very diverse broadband business? Once you have that table stakes of, I have a great experience, I have a high loyalty, I'm telling all my friends, I'm telling fellow business owners about how great the experience is, then I'm open to, I'd like to buy more. And that buy more part has always been a significant challenge. So what we have done in this transformation we went through, which is how do I actually make it so partners can integrate into our platform? This is a purely a platform ecosystem play. The platform integrates, or the partner integrates into our platform, and then they have access to over 1,000 broadband providers overnight. And for the broadband provider, instead of spending 2 years trying to make that partner work in their business, which is almost impossible, too costly, very risky, now what they can do instead is Calix shows up and says, hey, we have a new service that you can sell. Here are the marketing analytics so you can understand who to sell it to from a propensity to buy point of view. Here's marketing support and all the different elements. Let's launch the product, and they're up and running in, again, 7 to 30 days. It's an incredible opportunity.
I love that. That is fantastic. Okay, thank you for that, because now it crystallized. It makes perfect sense. So let's talk about risk. What are some, A, how do you handle risk? And then what are some mistakes you see people make with respect to risk management?
So how I handle risk is, the first thing is accept that it's a reality of life. I read a study, I think it was last week in the Wall Street Journal or something like that, maybe Harvard, can't remember, but they basically said, as CEOs, 39% of our time is consumed by, urgent issues, right? The risk and challenges are a part of life. And so, you want to encourage your team members to have a balanced view of things. So balance the risks, right? Also embrace that risk is, if you're going to be a different type of company, risk is a core part of what you do every single day. And if you don't take risks, you'll never succeed, because, the people who actually do the same thing as everybody else, we could have, our founder, he could have kept us as a hardware company, and we could have plugged along, made reasonable margins, but we never would have become the company we were. And when I joined, our market cap was $250 million. We were making significant investments, or losing a lot of money, almost out of cash. And at that $250 million market cap, we would have plugged along as a hardware company. And frankly, that's what everybody in this industry has done. Right. Instead, he had a vision for where we were going to go. He recognized the power of a platform model, this ecosystem model, like Salesforce has done, and investing in it over the long term so we can be a different company. And we took that risk. And so throughout it, it was just accepting that, yes, we're taking a big swim for the fences. There's going to be a lot of people who are constantly saying, I would rather you only do the safe thing, right? Right. But the reality is if you only do the safe thing, there are no payoffs. And for Calix to understand the magnitude of the payoff, both in real term today, but also the future, we are so right now, we are unique in our market. All of our competitors have not done it, and frankly, are incapable of doing it, because if I'm the CEO now, I took it over a few years ago, right? But it was founder led when we made this transformation, and lost a lot of money to make the transformation. Had I tried to do this, he and I joke, I would have been fired 10 times over, right? And he jokes, he should have been fired 10 times over for the amount of money that he lost, but because he was the largest shareholder, he could say, no, I'm actually pursuing this massive vision that's audacious. I'm going to transform the company with the right leadership team, and the payoff's going to be huge. So what's the payoff? Well, when I joined, it was a $4.35 stock, $250 million market cap, with a 32% margin and running out of cash. This year, in Q4, we haven't announced yet, but in Q4, we were projected to cross revenues organically of $1 billion, which only 1 in 400 companies do from inception to going public. So we've crossed that milestone. We have a mountain of cash. Margins are in the mid 50s. If we had not actually had the pandemic, which was annoying to us, because had the pandemic not happened, the problem with the pandemic is raised all boats. Had we actually just not had a pandemic, we would have been able to candidly destroy our competition faster, because the difference between the two of us would have been even more stark. So we have a significant amount of cash, and our margins have gone to 55. Had not been for the pandemic, we'd be at the 60-point area, right? Yeah. So we built this very healthy business that, and at the current stock price, I think we range between $2.5 and $6 billion is what we've been up and down on the, we're a growth stock, so there's a lot of variability in there. But we've between $2.5 billion and $6 billion. And had we actually not taken that risk, we would still be like a company with a multiple of 1-to-1 on revenue. And the best part about it is, more importantly, now that we're in this place, like Salesforce did, and no one is even close to us. We're in a blue ocean all by ourselves. Yeah. And next year in 2025 and the end of 2024, the US government is putting $62 billion, more than 25 years worth of investment into broadband.
Wow.
And we are smack in the middle of that market. We are the ones helping our broadband customers radically transform their businesses. And when that tsunami of money enters, again, beside the fact that private equity investment, family investment, all that's continuing on, but
Yeah.
this tsunami of money that has never been seen before in the US market is landing, and we're the dominant provider there. The upside is significant, and we're uniquely positioned. Everybody's been complaining that funding's been taking longer. I bluntly am really happy that it's not coming till the end of 24 into 25, because
Right.
frankly, it just allows us to expand our footprint, win more customers, and be in a more dominant position with a big honking catcher's mitt to catch that money.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, as you mentioned, you are a growth stock. The earnings have grown consecutively each of the last 4 quarters by double digits. Sales have grown double digits. So hats off to you. I mean, really, really great job. Let's talk about some timeless lessons, some that you've learned along the way that you'd like to share with the audience, please.
Sure. The most important lesson I learned right from the get-go is that, as a leader, is that success is about people. That's the first thing. And so, we all talk about who do we focus on. Actually, again, I go back to, this is something that was reinforced by our founder, Carl. You can look him up. He's very hard to find. He doesn't really have a social media profile, but you can go look him up. And one of the things that he always stated was that if you actually take a prioritization of what the company should be doing, you should always start with people, then you do customers. And if you actually take care of your people and your customers, then that third group, the investors, will be really happy, because it's the people and the customers and the partners who actually are the ones who make investors happy by helping you build a successful business. And so that's probably the most important lesson that I've learned, which is always focus on the team that you have. And a big part of that means, how do you actually have a great culture so you can attract new talent? That was critical for us, is that we really had to help people understand our purpose. And our purpose is all around helping broadband providers change their communities. And that really resonates with them. I'm kind of older, I'm 55. I really wasn't grown with purpose. I was really grown with, hey, you're poor, don't be poor anymore. So I just tried to make money, right?
Right.
But the younger generation, my sons and all the younger generation that I talk to, purpose is really important. And it makes logical sense, because I pursued money up until a point. And then once I had enough money, like once I felt comfortable, like I had achieved that safety level, then it really came about, I wanted to do meaningful work. And so I think that purpose is really also the second part, which is really important, is you got to really amplify the purpose of your company and how the team can say, okay, it's great that I get paid to take care of my family and my future, but then also, why is what I do so meaningful? And that's something we're really proud of. And I really do believe that that's one of the reasons why in 2023, we were basically won the award as the best place to work in Silicon Valley, which, when you consider who we are up against, we are super proud of, right? And then, and then the third timeless lesson I would say is always be learning. And we really try to encourage that with our customers, but also our team members, is you really need to embrace, that we talked about risk, making mistakes. You need to read, you need to consume knowledge as much as you can. Like, I was asking you questions before we started here about your book. And so it's already going on my Kindle list. And because I find, to your point, the psychology of investment fascinating. I would love to understand how you think. And, and one of the things I always put on LinkedIn is, and by the way, anyone's listening, feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite. I'm always posting, and I post about different things because I really have a firm belief. I like to read what people are reading. I like to read their philosophies and learnings, because by having a wildly diverse number of inputs, I think we become better as people.
Yeah, no, I love that 100%. So those are some really, really good lessons. Thank you. How about some timeless mistakes, and how do you avoid them?
So I would say, if I look back on my career, so I'm going to give you a leadership one and a personal one. I'll start with the personal one. The biggest mistake I ever made in my career was actually taking a job for money. And it's not on my LinkedIn. And that's because I was going to go work for Satan, and it was horrible. It was like 3 months it was 3 horrible months of my life. And, the reason why is because I still remember they pushed me really aggressively. I was working at Dell. Dell was a $2 billion company. I was wildly successful. I had a great career going on. And then they came to me about how I could triple my income. And I was younger, I was blind, I'd never made that mistake before. And so I went there, but they were horrible people. I kind of make the joke that I went to work in the culture of Satan, but it was that. It was EMC in the 90s. It was a horrible place. It was everything was about money, screw the customer, bad morals and ethics. And after 3 months, I cut my losses. I said, I can't work here because I'm not immoral.
Right.
And so I quit it. So, and to this day, whenever and by the way, that's one of the reasons why I joined CALX. I was considering joining taking this other job to leave Salesforce, and it was insanely lucrative. But in the back of my head was this nag of that the only career mistake you've ever made is when you took a job for money, and the job was really lucrative, but it was the same thing I was doing, and so it was really freaking boring. And then CALX came and said, hey, here's a learning opportunity. We're going to change an industry. I met Carl, who to this day is the smartest man I've ever met. He got accepted to university at 14. He's one of those kind of people. And, he unnecessarily uses large words, right? So all the time, right? Yeah. Which I mock him for. But I have learned over the last it's been every day I get up and I feel excited, and it's not about the money. It's actually about I get to work with incredible customers. I'm traveling today out in the snow, getting to meet a customer, and I'm super excited about it. It's great to spend time with them, to learn about their business and how we can help them. So that's the personal lesson. The leadership lesson is actually something I posted on as I reflected on 2023. The greatest weakness I see in leaders is the inability to move quickly on removing low performers. It is something that I see time and time again. If I was to pick the most common weakness that I see in leaders, that's it. And the reason why is because there's two elements to it. And in fact, what I put on my LinkedIn post was we had Stephen Covey, who wrote The Speed of Trust, speak at our customer event in October. We had 3,000 people there. He spoke, and then we had him back to our leadership meeting in December, where we had all of our people leaders from around the world, about 350 of them together, because we're an all virtual culture. And so we bring them all together once a year. And what he talked about was trust is really about two components. One is the ability to deliver results. The other one is integrity and capability and all those things. And one of my peers, John DeRocher, he basically had this epiphany. He said, well, we always talk about how people have a tough time removing low performers. He goes, this is how you categorize it. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, look, so if you look at a low performer, they're in one of two buckets. One, they have great integrity, they have great character, but they're not delivering results. And therefore, as a manager, gosh, you really wish that they could get over the line and do it. And so what you do is you take extra time to try and help them because you care about them and you're a good person. But the problem is they don't have the capabilities to actually to achieve the goals. Yeah. And therefore it's really hard. The other one, which is a bit easier, which is they don't have character and integrity, but they're making the results, but they're toxic in the culture. Yeah. Then a weak manager will go, yeah, but if I lose them, they're at a 200% of plan. How do I, right? Yeah. So this is a great framework to basically categorize which bucket they're in, and then also really encourage the leader to make a decision faster.
I love that. So thank you very much for that. Let's talk about some obstacles and adversity. How do you handle adversity, and what are some obstacles, Michael, that you had to overcome on your journey?
So how do we handle obstacles? So, I think the first one is you have to identify them clearly and not be delusional, right? I always say, and I think that's the other part too. Well, that's not a joke, right? Like people actually are a bit delusional. They're like, oh no, it's not that bad. Bull, right? If your gut says something's bad, and I always say, good news should travel fast, bad news should travel faster, right? And now I don't subscribe to what Bill Gates always did, because I always thought he was a jerk when he did this. He would do a business review and someone would come up and say, well, here's the good things that are going on in my business. And he said, yeah, I don't give a shit about that. I want to hear your bad stuff, right? And I think that's a horrible way as a leader to manage it, because what you're doing is you're not giving them an opportunity to feel good about their contribution, and you're just, focusing on the negative. So I think we have to have a balance, but bad news needs to travel fast. And another thing I say is that lone wolves get shot. Mm-hmm. So what also happens is that there's this mentality of, okay, I've got a problem, I'm going to solve it myself. The reason why that news has to travel fast is because lone wolves do get shot. The pack wins. And so
Right.
if you got bad news, you better get everybody involved as fast as you can, because honestly, okay, we'll acknowledge it. Let's say it's your fault. Okay, that's going to last for about 8 seconds. You bozo, why'd you do that? Right. But
Right.
then we're going to be like, okay, so we got a problem. Now, how are we going to fix it? Now, if you make that same mistake 3 times in a row, that's a broader issue and there's going to be an issue. So that's how I deal with risk, is that let's get it surfaced and then let's all pile on and say, okay, how do we build a plan to solve it? So that's really how I think about the obstacles. And now
Love
what
it.
obstacles, oh, sorry, you have a
Oh,
question
no,
on that?
no, that makes perfect sense. If you want to go into obstacles, by all means.
Well, and then, so that's how you deal with issues and obstacles. And then the obstacles, look, the obstacle that Calix faced as a company is we are the innovator's dilemma.
Right.
So if you've read the Innovators Dilemma, or the book that I like better, which is Lead and Disrupt, which was a follow-on out of Stanford, and it basically takes the philosophies of the Innovators Dilemma and provides, I think, a much more practical framework. Because I don't agree that the Innovators Dilemma says the only way you can actually innovate inside a large company is to create a separate company. That's not practical, right?
Yeah.
But Lead and Disrupt gives you a great framework. And in fact, we had the professor who wrote that on. I worked with them kind of 3 years into my role. I said, well, I find what you read or what you wrote, we've been following it, should you come in? And he said, okay, walk me through what you've done. He goes, you're doing our book, right? You're doing it right.
Right.
Now, only 1 in 100 can accomplish it, because it's how do you actually completely change the business while being public. Would have been easier to be private, but while being public, meeting goals, and then keeping investors and all those elements happy, it was very hard. And so the obstacle for us was actually, how do you transform from a dumb box company
Hardware. Yeah.
into a software, cloud, and appliance company?
Mhm.
Hardware's still part of it, but it's an appliance with all the complexity abstracted upwards. And in the end, the biggest challenge in all of that, the biggest obstacle, was people.
Mhm.
Because the people who had got us, had built the first company,
Yeah.
were not the people who were going to build the second company. And to understand the magnitude of what we do, we process 15 terabytes of data an hour for our customers. So, we're at the forefront of their marketing and their call centers and everything they do from a field service point of view, versus here's a box to run a fiber network. It's we run their business end to end. And so, Carl, when he first started on that journey 13 years ago, he tells a story where he stood up in front of everybody and he said, here's where we're going to go. And he had a vision for where we're going to go, again, 13 years ago. And they all said, well, what about the people? And he said, oh, it's going to be about a 20% change. Well, actually, he got his number backwards. It was an 80% change of staff. And only 20% actually evolved with it and were able to stay forward. So from an obstacle point of view, that was the biggest obstacle. Then, the second obstacle was, as we were in this recruiting phase, and you think about how hot, like our big growth was started in 2019, was how do you attract the right talent? And that's where, as we had a board member join from Indeed. And I remember when we were recruiting him into a board position, he said to me, he goes, how is it that I don't know you, right? You're the most interesting cloud company in the Valley that I just don't know. He goes, and by the way, I hear that all the time, right? Everyone say, how is it that I don't know Calix? Because what you're doing is so fascinating. You've gone on this incredible journey. You have these incredible customers, and our customers are just amazing. You have all these great customers. How do I not know about this great business that you've built? And I said, well, because we're in a very specific niche in the marketplace, and unless you know what we're doing. And so I would say that was our second obstacle, is how do you educate, first of all, folks to join the company? And that was where we got really purpose centric around helping communities, changing education, bridging the digital divide, helping small businesses thrive, protecting helping parents protect their children from cyberbullies and depression and suicide and all these kind of things, right? And once they understand that that's what our technology is really enabling, people got on board. So I would say those are the 2 biggest obstacles.
I love that. And then let's talk about advice. What's the best piece of advice you'd like to give the audience or give your 30-year-old self?
The best piece of advice I'd give my 30-year-old self is that everything, look, it's more of a philosophy that I've retained, is that all the bad things that sucked through your career, they're for a reason, and they're probably they are the most valuable things you'll learn. So, we all talk about if I was to go back and change something, and there was an incredible article with the CEO of NVIDIA, who about, I think it was about 3 weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, and what he basically talked about was creating a $1 trillion value company. And he talked about how if he was to go back and talk to his older self, he would say, don't do it.
Right.
And the reason why he would say don't do it is he said it's too freaking painful. He goes, the challenges, everyone beating up on you, because you think about what he did with that company, it's soul sucking, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge price that he paid.
Yeah.
And so I think, that's why when we say what will you tell your 30-year-old self, just say, actually, all those bad things that are going to happen to you are really valuable, and they will form you into the person that you are, and they will lead to success long term, but just keep at it, right? What I wouldn't tell my old self is actually how much pain was coming.
Understood.
Because in retrospect, if I was to go back, there was a whole bunch of things when I look back at it, you were insane. Like, when I went to Salesforce to go to Tokyo, right? I'd never been to Asia. And what happened is that we had left Europe, we came back to Canada, I was doing this incredible job. And I sat down with my family and I said, okay, well, you guys want to go do the international, and we did Europe. And I said, I want to go to Asia because I want to be a global leader. And we've got all kinds of European experience. It was great. And the boys were going into high school. And I said to my sons, I said, would you guys go to Asia? And they were like, okay, again, they didn't really, my wife was excited, but the boys didn't really, they're young, and they're like, hey, the parents said yes, but they were going into high school. And I still remember reaching out to recruiters in Asia, and all of them telling me I was insane. They said, you have no experience in Asia. And I'm like, and at that time, I'd run 4 transformations, like turnarounds of businesses. At Bell Canada, I'd just taken it from a 5-year failing business to 14 quarters of double-digit growth, massive shift in employee sentiment and customer satisfaction. I'm like, hey, that was $1 billion business I just turned around. Why wouldn't you want me? And they're like, you don't know anything about Asia. And in fact, at that time, I'd never been there. And then what happened was, through constantly reaching out to a whole bunch of people, the opportunity came up, and I went, we up and lift and went to Tokyo. Now, in retrospect, if I was to actually legitimately do the pros and cons and the risks of that job, especially because of the fact that 99 out of 100 people who do an expat in Tokyo fail, right? Had I actually, in retrospect, would I tell myself you should take that risk? No, I almost got fired twice, because it was so insane. But, I was very fortunate. In that case, I have a LinkedIn article on my profile, which was around moving to Japan. And it all comes from my 3rd week in, I met a Canadian guy who was working for one of the big 5. I can't remember which one, Deloitte or Anderson or something like that. I was at Salesforce. We had a partner lunch. And at the end of it, he looked at me and he said, so what are you going to be? Are you going to be the 99% of expats who fail in Japan? Or are you going to be the successful 1%? And it just stopped me. And I'm like, well, I'd like to be the successful 1%. What do I go, you've been here for 25 years. What do I have to do? And in that article on LinkedIn, he basically laid out, here's how you will succeed in Japan. And this is why when, an expat from the United States or something like that comes in, why they all fail. Again, to understand Japan culture, for the first X thousands of years, whenever a foreigner came into Japan, they killed them.
Yeah,
right? Wasn't it? Right. And so you're a foreigner coming in. They've got patience, right? They'll just wait you out and expect you to, and then they'll ship you home. And so by taking the approaches that he guided me, how fortuitous was, the graciousness of others who bless us with ideas, right? Well, he was just gracious enough to share. And in the end, if I think about all the greatest things I've learned, is from all these amazing people who took the time to care and say, I'll give you advice. And then you have to decide whether or not it's good advice or bad advice. And in that case, my gosh, it completely adjusted my thought process and was the reason why I was successful. But almost, again, I'm someone who pushes for change, takes the risk. So I almost got fired twice. But, because of him, I was able to get through it. So a long answer to an interesting question that I've reflected on.
Thank you. Well, Michael, this has been absolutely fantastic. Ticker symbol is CALX. People can connect with you on LinkedIn, and they also can go to the website for more information. Hopefully, Michael will have you on again soon. I think you guys are absolutely fantastic, and congratulations on all the success.
Thanks for your time, Adam. It was great.